Hey there, friends and running fans. This is Amby Burfoot, welcoming you to the latest episode of the podcast, Running State of the Sport.
And this is George Hirsch, your co-host at Running State of the Sport. In every episode, we talk to the smartest, most informed, most influential, and sometimes fastest runners on the planet.
This week, we're talking to one of the top up-and-coming U.S. female marathoners, and there are quite a few of them, I must say. She might be the youngest of them all, and she recently had a terrific race at the California International Marathon.
Yeah, at Cal International, Jackie Gaughan ran an impressive 2:24:40 to improve on her personal best of just over 2:27. But the real eye-opener, Amby, was her second half split. It was in the low 110s. Jackie will face her next big test in April when she races her first Boston Marathon. But before we get to Jackie, let's look at some of the biggest running news. Amby, what caught your attention?
Well, George, the first thing is that the indoor track season is just explosive in the United States and around the world as well now. I used to think it was just a couple of meets, and now there are meets and fast tracks and fast performers everywhere. And this past weekend was certainly one of those. On the women's side, which is what I'm going to cover, we particularly had a number of top Americans running the 3,000-meter distance in various venues around the country, and a lot of them ran very similar times. One of the big stories, of course, was Shelby Houlihan, and she's a big story because she's coming back from a 4-year doping bust. This was her first race in more than 4 years. She didn't have much competition down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, but she ran an 8:31, which is very quick, and she won by more than 34 seconds. Over at the weekend's big New Balance Invitational race, Elise Cranny was second in 8:29, a couple of seconds faster than Shelby. And Parker Valby, who had such a great collegiate season, career, she was third in 8:34. So she's also right in the mix there. At an entirely different meet, Nikki Hiltz, the great 1,500 and more runner, ran 8:32. So she and all of them are really getting ready for big outdoor seasons with their impressive indoor results. And I'm going to bring up one road result as well. When we talked recently about the races down in Houston, we only mentioned the American records by Connor Mance and Wayne Colati. But in the marathon, American Erica Kemp ran a 2:22:56. That pushes her up into those ranks of top American women and makes her the fastest ever Black American born in the U.S. in the marathon. For her, it was an 11-minute PR. She's living and training in Providence, Rhode Island, where she's coached by Molly Huddle's husband, Kurt Benninger. George, I left the men to you. Were any of those guys running good times this weekend?
Oh my God. Amby, on our prior podcast with Ray Flynn, we spent some time talking about the fact that probably the premier event in track and field right now is the mile/1500, in which he had the three medalists from Paris in his agency, Cole Hocker and Yared Nuguse and Josh Kerr, of course. And, those guys, along with Jakob Ingebrigtsen, make this an incredible event as it is. And now we're getting some exciting new young talent in the mile run that is just dazzling and going to only make this event more spectacular. In the BU Terrier Classic on the 1st of February in Boston, a guy we've been keeping an eye on, North Carolina still undergraduate, Ethan Strand, ran 3:48:32, Amby. That's the third fastest world time ever indoors. And, he's still an undergraduate. And he's got a teammate, Parker Wolf, who's an NCAA outdoor 5,000 meter champion who runs in the same league. So those are two guys we're watching. And then there's this 18-year-old Australian named Cam Myers, who just comes along and runs a mile in the world under 20 world record time of 3:53, just adding to the mix. And it's fabulous. And then there was another incredible race that I had noted and watched on TV, and in which Josh Hoey ran a 3:33 and changed 1,500, just beating Grant Fisher. And Grant Fisher, of course, is a 5,000, 10,000 specialist. So for him to be running at that level in the mile only says that he's going to be spectacular when he gets back to, running the 3,000, which he'll be doing. All of this, Amby, builds to the Wanamaker Mile at the Millrose Games, which is coming up, and it's loaded. It's got Josh Kerr, it's got Nagoose, Hobbs Kessler, who ran so well in Paris. Knowing Ray Flynn, he's probably going to get a couple more of the top guys in there, and it should just be a barn burner. So I can't wait for that.
It's truly amazing what people are running indoors these days. In fact, I think they now prefer indoor running to outdoors because, of course, they've got good conditions, no wind, which every runner hates, and they are just burning up these tracks. We used to think indoors was slow. Now it's fast. And that's our view on the biggest recent news from the world of running. Now let's turn to Jackie Gaughan, today's guest at the podcast, Running State of the Sport. Jackie is one of the many brilliant up-and-coming female U.S. marathon runners who are beginning to make a real mark at the 26.2-mile distance.
In December, Jackie finished second in the Cal International Marathon with a personal best of 2:24:40. But that wasn't the most impressive thing about her performance in Sacramento. It was the huge negative split she recorded for the second half. We'll be talking to her about that in just a moment or two.
Jackie, welcome to the Running State of the Sport podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Amby and George. So excited to meet you both, and thank you for having me.
So, Jackie, first let's ask you, how do you pronounce your last name so that we and others know exactly how to say it? And then let's go on to give our listeners some of your current bio details, your age, where you're living, do you have a job outside of running? And, what do you do on a typical day after that alarm goes off?
My name's Jackie Gaughan. I live in downtown Boston. I have a full-time job working in investment research, but then also run for Team Saucony. Fairly young for, I feel like, the marathon world. I'm 25, graduated about 2 years ago. I guess my mornings are hectic. I think it would probably frighten a couple people. I get up pretty early, get my big workout in, and then kind of throwing my shoes off in the elevator, getting ready to go to the office. And then typically I'm at my desk somewhere around 8:30, and dialed in at work. And then typically we'll get in maybe sometimes a second run, depending on where I am in my training cycle after work too.
Well, Jackie, I got to tell you, George and I can highly recommend retirement, but at your age, you might not quite be ready for that. Let's talk about the 2:24 at Cal International. As we said, what was really unexpected and leapt off the page was the fact that you ran the second half in very low 110, 70 minutes. That's 220 pace, not 224 pace. So how did that happen? Was it planned? Was it a miracle? We'd like to drill down into it.
Yeah, I think I'm equally as surprised as a lot of people might be from the outside as well too. I had been training for the Chicago Marathon originally over the fall, and really felt like workouts were just really clicking off. Really felt like I was maybe in the best shape of my life, and then felt great for maybe 16, 17 miles to Chicago, and then just felt like the wheels came off. Didn't really feel like I had much underneath me to push off of, but still felt like I had more to give, but just couldn't. Kind of hit that famous marathon wall that's everyone's worst nightmare. And I just remember finishing and just thinking like there must be something I could do better. Like there must have been, and I think I took a look at just my fueling strategy. I think everyone talks about how important that is in the marathon, and it's not something I'd ever practiced in training or really, I think, ever like put together a really calculated plan. I kind of, I think it's something I really overlooked. My philosophy of running has been not to overthink things, not to overcomplicate it, and you need to have a fueling strategy in advance. I think it's something you need to think about, plan about, think 2 steps ahead. I think sometimes in a race when you start to feel like you need the carbs, the fluids, it's almost too late. So I started to think a little bit about running 6 a.m. possibly. And I think the major goal there was to practice some sort of fueling strategy mid race. And I was just curious to see how much better I would feel, and went out pretty conservative, was just really focused on grabbing every single bottle and gel, and then got to the halfway point and was just shocked at like how much better I felt, and just decided to pick it up a bit. And I think I didn't realize how much I had picked it up, but at that point it's like if you slow down it's really only going to get harder. So it just felt like kept rolling with it, and yeah, I think crossing the finish line, it was definitely a feeling I wish I could like bottle up and share with a lot of people.
Well, you sure did pick it up. My goodness, what a negative split that was in Cal International. And going in, just a few questions about your training. Did you feel particularly great? You knew you were going to have a big day. You mentioned your fueling strategy, and you can tell us a little bit about what it was, the carbs you took, and you said you wanted to get ahead of it and not behind on that during the race. And how about caffeine? Was that part of your plan? And just, take us a little bit deeper into what the overall race strategy was there.
Yeah. I think that training cycle between Chicago and CIM, like, to be honest, workouts weren't really clicking. I think like I had been marathon training for a while at that point, so the fatigue was definitely, I think, like setting in a little bit. And I think when I started to taper, I really felt like I uncovered a lot of fitness that was there. And then in regards to the fueling strategy, I was able to kind of touch base with a lot of my friends who have been marathoning for far longer than I have, and get a feel for like what's worked for them, what hasn't worked. I also was put in touch with one of the Morton representatives, and I've been utilizing their products, and they gave me some great advice on how to use them. I actually did not really take many fluids during the race. I think that's something I'll have to work on as far as like if conditions are warmer for future races. I think it's more important to get fluids and electrolytes in, but just really tried to get, I think, 60 to 80 carbs per hour, versus I think in my previous marathons it was more so 0 carbs per hour. So I think it made a huge difference.
That is a difference.
Yeah.
So you told we were going to ask you about Chicago, knowing that it was a disappointment, but you've already told us that. We're going to ask you about one more disappointing marathon, and then we promise we'll stop. We're not that bad, really. But we know that in the fall of in September 2023, you ran a really strong 2:27 at Berlin. You had 6 months to go before the Olympic marathon trials in February of last year now. And that race didn't go probably as you would have hoped. Could you tell us about your marathon trials race in Orlando last February?
Yeah, I think the build up for that trials race was honestly the most fun I've had with training in a long time. I think just the amount of qualifiers here in Boston, all training for the same race, made it a really fun training cycle. And I felt like I was in great shape going in and really put myself out there. And I'm proud of the race I ran. It was an incredibly hard race. I think maybe one of the hardest marathon I've run. I think the heat got to me a little bit. I think like looking back on it now, I didn't realize it until I learned how to fuel correctly during a race. I think I was probably underfueled. It was another kind of situation where I wasn't really drinking fluids, wasn't really taking gels, didn't have a plan. So do have a little bit of curiosity of, okay, like maybe in 2-3 years now that I have this new strategy down, could I place even higher? I think that excites me. And but I do remember it was really hard. I think questionable whether I was going to finish at a couple points. My parents traveled down to watch the race, and they saw me coming through that second loop, and I just kind of had this look in my eye that they could tell that I was in a lot of pain. But I'm proud of the way I like persevered through that, and I think it takes a lot of like courage to like keep running and keep trying when like things aren't perfect and things like aren't going exactly the way you had like envisioned it to go, and just being okay with that imperfection of it. So yeah, I think like overall proud of the race, but I think there were ways I probably could have like planned better, executed better. But that's kind of why I keep showing up every day. It's just there's always more growth to be had.
And Jackie, let's give you credit for the fact that you finished 25th in the trials, your first marathon trials, and that's a pretty great accomplishment. Your time of 2:34 wasn't what you would have hoped for after a 2:27 at Berlin, but it was still a terrific race. And as you say, you struggled past the hardest stuff in your life and you got there to the finish. George?
So, Jackie, in the movie version of your life, you go out and you run 2:24 at the Cal International, and then you would quit everything else in your life and dedicate yourself fully to making the 2028 Olympic team. But I don't think you read that particular movie script. Sounds like you still have a full-time job. And tell us about that. And where does running fit into your full life at this
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, I think the unique thing and a really special thing about our sport of distance running is there's a lot of different ways to do it, a lot of different ways to be successful. And I think for some people to run their best, it maybe does take like quitting your day job and really like devoting your 10, 12 hours of the day to it. But I think for me, like it can be devoting that much time to running is suffocating. And I think I'm that kind of all in type of person where I'll definitely pour um, everything into my goal and everything into sometimes to a point where there's too much pressure on it. And I think just having like a full-time job, having this like passion outside of running allows me to take the pressure off of it. I think like there's going to be mornings where the workout doesn't go right, or like just you're just tired and don't execute the splits. And I think like being able to like go into work, I just clear my head and I kind of have to move on and forget about a lot of times I can't remember like what I did last week even, and just kind of keep moving forward with training. I think it also allows me to kind of balance like not overtraining too. I think it's the more hours in the day I have, I think I've like I love training. I think I could train all day. So, but having the full-time job, you're really constrained to those morning hours, those evening hours, and kind of puts on the guardrails a little bit. And I think I'm not someone who's like willing to give up on either end. I'm really passionate about my career in finance, and I'm also very passionate about running. And I think I don't see a reason why I can't have both. Yeah, I don't see a reason why I can't do both well. And I think maybe it's the harder route, but I'm up for the challenge.
Jackie, I'm listening to that and I'm thinking that George and I were lucky enough for many years to work for a real fitness-based company that owned
Hmm.
Runner's World magazine and bicycling and other fitness sports. And one of the great things is nobody was really counting our lunch hour. If we kind of went out for a 90-minute run at lunchtime, we had showers and a cafeteria there, and there
Yeah.
wasn't a clock on us. I'm wondering if Goldman Sachs has got a gym in your office, and if anyone would like to give you 2-hour lunches.
Yeah. I'm actually working for another firm right
I'm
now in
sorry.
investment research. So just took like the next step in my career recently. But yeah, I haven't had a lunch break in my career yet. But I enjoy kind of the fast-paced nature of it, and I think wherever I've been, my coworkers have been like incredibly supportive of it, and I think that also brings a different perspective to it as well. Like I could be mornings where I'm like, just did like a 10-12 mile run. And I think that sounds amazing to to your I guess your average runner.
So we're wondering, we haven't heard a lot about a coach or a training advisor who's worked with you up to this point. Have
Mhm.
you had a coach? Are you self-coached? And could you give us a general picture of your basic weekly training plan? How many miles, and what are a couple of workouts that you consider pretty important each week?
Yeah, I owe a lot of people to just my like development as an athlete, even going back to like high school. My coaches in high school, I think were always like um, stress the importance of like balance, like having fun with the sport, but also like building strength. And then my college coach too is still someone like I'll stay in touch with. And I think whether I run my best race or my worst race, he's one of the first people I'll call or text. And then Jamie Norton, I worked with him when I was on the Green Racing Project, and that's how we met. And then have continued to work together as I've transitioned to run for Saucony now. And I think just the relationship of like I think being very flexible with training, especially when I'm working full time, like you sometimes don't can't work out on the exact day you want to work out, or sometimes the weather's bad, or sometimes I'm just really tired from a lot of late nights. And yeah, I think I have really stressed. It's a lot of like strength based work. I run quite a few miles, and I think that's just the way my body is wired. Is just it responds well to a lot of mileage. And then we'll do a lot of like pace shifting workouts, which I think has really helped me, especially like in the scenarios, just like trying to negative split and trying to, I think, like shift from, I guess, like going from a slower pace to a faster pace while still having like a lot of fatigue in your legs. I think I've benefited from those type of workouts a lot.
So, Jackie, you mentioned Saucony just now, and we saw that you signed up with them, I think it was last fall. So, did you negotiate that deal by yourself, or did you have someone else do it? And how do you consider yourself as a high risk investment, medium, or low? And what's the potential payoff of investing in Jackie Gaughan?
Yeah, I've been working with Howie Kofleski. He's been
Oh,
my agent for the past 2 years. So it was over the course of the summer that we were kind of in negotiation with that, and I think I'm really grateful for both Saucony and Howie's support. I've been, I think, a fan of Saucony ever since the past 2 or 3 years, kind of just buying their shoes on my own. So I think it was just an easy transition if I already knew I love the footwear. They have such a strong like Boston presence, and it just felt like a great fit culturally as well too. Um, and I think I think like being so young and like early in my life cycle, I think I'm definitely more of kind of like a venture investment, kind of like a Series A funding stage, in terms of like you're going to talk about it in terms of finance, something I've always like when I'm investing, something I think about is like the importance of like getting into the investing stage like early in the life cycle, so you can kind of see the company or stock through its full runway of growth. So I think Saucony's jumping on pretty early on, and I think I have a long ways to grow, and I'm grateful for their support thus far, and I think I can grow even a little bit further faster, having that support behind me.
Jackie,
So,
thank you.
excuse me, Abby, I was just going to say, we know with venture capital investing, the whole idea is that a lot of those investments go nowhere, but one or two out of every, handful that do
Mm-hmm.
can really go big. And maybe that's what Saucony's looking at in you.
Yeah. No, I think I'm committed to making these small changes. I guess, like for example, the incorporating like fueling into my marathon. So I think end up having some big returns, and I think there's still a lot of things in the marathon I'm a little bit naive to, and kind of problem solving and discovering new ways of training and ways of racing every time I get out there.
Jackie, thank you for playing with that investment strategy analogy we tossed you. We didn't know where it would go, but you took it just exactly the right way. So thank you for that. I was hoping you would say you were a cryptocurrency. Not that I know what that means, but I was just hoping for that.
Yeah, I would hope there's some like fundamental underlying value in my stock
Yeah,
right now, but
your value investment. Good. So, we've heard that you have a boyfriend who was also a marathon trials qualifier last year. That's rather unusual for a young couple. How much do you guys run together, and how do you encourage each other?
yeah. Funny enough, we did meet through like a running club. I think like running's a great way to like bring together friends and well, who knows, maybe significant others as well too. We run together time to time, but quite frankly, he's gotten too fast for me now. But every so often we'll do like an easy run together. But I think like it's nice just having someone who like understands kind of like those 7 8 p.m. shakeout runs, or kind of like when the alarm goes off early in the morning, and just yeah, I think we've been able to like relate a lot through it and kind of inspire each other a little bit too. But yeah, we run together every so often. I think not too often though. There was one long run that I think almost ended it all, where we're maybe 18, 19 miles in. It was a really hot day, and we were both like kind of just trying to get through it, and I was like getting a little mad, like Eric, like you gotta start talking. Like I'm clearly in pain here. You gotta distract me, and he was like, you don't look so great. Like you should probably stop. And I was like, oh, I'm not gonna listen to him. I gotta finish this run. But and it ended up being a pretty good long run. But yeah, so from time to time.
So you were young enough that you grew up reading about many of the great U.S. female marathon runners of the
Hmm.
of this last generation, really. Dina Castor, Des Linden, Kara Goucher, Shalane Flanagan, and others. And I'm sure you must have admired them and probably wanted to emulate one or more of them, and or were there others that you looked up to? How did they influence you?
Yeah. No, I feel so grateful to just have all these people like come before me and pave the way. And even people like right now who are younger, older, like I just feel so inspired by the whole running community, and especially how like even like women like later into their careers are um still like enjoying the sport and running well like into their late 30s and 40s. And I just remember like way back when I was in middle school, like watching Shalane Flanagan and Des Linden and Amy Craig qualify for the trials, and just feeling like so inspired, and then heading out for my own long run and kind of picking up a little bit harder those last few miles. And I think it's more so the attitude and just like spirit around the sport too. I think people can find like a lot of joy in it, and I think I have found that it's like added a lot of value to my life, and yeah, I think I'm inspired by people who have like still that like joyous nature around the sport.
Jackie, one way the most of those runners you just mentioned are different from you is that they graduated from college and spent 3, 4, 5, 6 years working on their track times before they moved up to the marathon. You kind of graduated from college and ran a marathon within a year of that. Why did you go so quickly to the marathon? And was it the right decision?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I graduated college and like didn't really have those super fast 5K, 10K times. Didn't really have, I guess, those credentials on paper to really be a high level 5K, 10K runner. And kind of felt like I was maybe done with competitive running. Wasn't really planning on getting back on the track or getting back into the racing, but had joined a running club, and there were a lot of girls in the team that were training to qualify for the Olympic trials. And I think just by osmosis, I also kind of got tied to this goal and just thought like it only happens every 4 years. Like I'm never gonna know if I don't give it a shot. Like so signed up for the Houston Marathon and decided like I'm just gonna give myself a chance, and qualified. And I think kind of got the bug from there of kind of like it's this unique sport where you just keep setting goals a little bit faster and faster every year. And I think that's what I've done. I think after I ran, I think 2:34 there, my next goal is to try to break 2:30. So eventually did that at Berlin. And then I think you start to kind of creep your mind closer to that 2:20 range. And I still will dabble in the shorter distances every so often. And I think I've actually noticed that like the more strength I've gotten from the marathon training, I've actually been able to bring down my 10K time. Did a little bit of work trying to run the 10K this spring, and ran like a 45-second PR. But I'm never going to be a world-class 5K runner or 10K runner. I'm probably never going to break 15:30, but that's just not who I am. You don't hire your financial advisor to do your taxes. I think there's ways I can work on speed to become better especially towards the end of the marathon. But I'm definitely never going to be a 5K, 10K specialist.
You said you had a love-hate relationship with running when you were in college, and what was that about, and how has that all evolved since?
Yeah. I think like being in the college atmosphere, there was definitely a lot more intensity around the sport. I think like coming from a small New Hampshire kind of like running environment, I trained hard, but there wasn't as much like intensity around the environment. And then I think I just was just almost like squeezing running too hard when I was running in college a lot. I think like putting too much pressure on it. And I think I had this ideology of like, if I want to be the best collegiate runner, I want to set all these PRs, place this high, like there's things I need to give up. I need to give up, I don't know, whether it be social activities or I don't know, just I felt like I had to take things out of my life to become a better runner. Like I don't know, like I needed to go to bed earlier. I needed to run more mileage. Couldn't eat the Oreo. Like I think I was squeezing running so hard that it like I wasn't really getting the potential out of myself, and I think like overthinking it a little bit. And then I think like gradually, the more I like stopped caring so much, I like ironically started to feel like I got my legs back under me and felt like I was gaining some more momentum towards the end of my senior year there. And I think carried that a little bit over into post collegiate running as well too, and just still hold that ideology of running is great. I mean, I think you need to be self-disciplined, and I think there's certain sacrifices that you do need to make to reach your potential, but you don't need to give everything up to do that. And I think there's like a level of diminishing return as well too.
Another good investment analogy, perhaps. So there's a little marathon in Boston happening in a couple of months, and I believe that you are running it for the first time ever. That must feel pretty significant. Let's talk about just how you're feeling about it first, and then maybe we'll get into some more specific things about getting ready for Boston.
Yeah, no, I'm incredibly excited. I think just like growing up here in the Boston area, it's always been the marathon. I think it definitely, out of all the world majors, it scares me the most. I think just because I have the most respect for it and just because the course is also so challenging. But yeah, no, feeling rested and recovered, have just kind of overcame a little bit of an Achilles injury and excited to kind of jump into the cycle and see how fit I can get over these next 10 to 12 weeks. And I live a mile or so from the finish line, so I'm in the perfect training grounds to get ready.
I don't know if the last mile's the perfect training grounds. I gotta believe you're going to be out on some other part of the course for some
Yeah,
tough.
definitely gonna need to go out to the Newton Hills and really practice some of that uphill and downhill running and yeah, tearing up the legs a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. You answered my question before I could ask it, which is what I would expect of someone who's getting ready for Boston, as
Mhm.
you are. Um, So the other thing I've noticed when I was looking at your name on the list is there are an incredible number of top American females running Boston this year with times within a minute or two of yours. I mean, it feels almost like there's 10 of you who've run
Mhm.
222 to 225. What are you thinking of in terms of mixing it up with that crowd, which really is the top American women?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it says a lot about like how far women's marathoning has come too. Just to have so many women in the same race running similar times, so close to I think like that 220 range. Um, at first, I think honestly, looking at the list, I was a little bit intimidated. But I see it as a great opportunity. I think like the only thing I can do that's within my control is to show up on that start line. With in the best shape I feel like I can be in the best version of myself, and just try to keep a calm mind and positive perspective throughout the race. And just yeah, I just want to be the best version of myself on the day, and I think everyone else is going to be trying to do the same thing as well too. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
Well, run well in Boston for sure. So, Jackie, we close all our podcasts with the same two questions. And the first is about the sport itself. What's the state of the sport from your perspective? What's going well? And what do you think could be better? What could be improved?
Yeah, no, I think we're in an exciting space in the sport where I mean, times just keep dropping. I think people are just making each other better. I think like anytime I see someone run um, a fast time, I think it like inspires me to wonder like, could I do that as well? Like, I think it's women just like pushing each other to get better. I think just a matter of like yeah, training and just kind of seeing each other achieve different things. It's definitely not like a zero sum game. Um, in terms of something that could be better, I think social media is one thing around the sport that could be a little bit better. I worry too, especially with so many like young athletes now. I think social media has become such like a huge part of the sport, and I think it like sometimes portrays only like the good moments versus sometimes like the raw moments of the sport, and I think it can sometimes be like an added pressure. Especially I think like for young athletes in the sport, I think it's such a time that you're still like trying to find yourself, and with the new sponsorship deals, I think it could put more pressure on younger athletes, and I think it's something I would worry about for a younger Jackie. But
Jackie, thank you for that thoughtful answer. So the second of our two standard questions is more about you. We're going to give you three fairy godmother wishes that you can make come true. You only get three, But what are they? What would you like to achieve in your own life, in running, of course, and maybe otherwise, short term and long term?
Yeah. I guess first off, maybe a little bit selfishly, I hope for 10 to 12 weeks of healthy running, a great build up for the Boston Marathon. I think like health is wealth in this sport, so just staying healthy throughout the whole build up. Um, and hoping for a tailwind day, Boston this year for all Boston Marathon runners. Um, and then I guess thirdly, I just hope I can like inspire someone. I think like I hope I can be that person that I needed when I graduated from college and just thought I don't have the times. Like this is the end of competitive running for me. Like I think I felt like I needed to move on with the rest of my life and I didn't kind of like um I didn't earn that kind of like didn't have the times to earn the investment into myself. I hope I can inspire someone who maybe has a passion for a career outside of running too, and but still has running goals and who wants to tackle both. So yeah, I hope someone maybe graduating this spring can look at like the transition I made and maybe be inspired to do something similar. But
Jackie, I'm sure you are already inspiring some, even though you're quite young, and in the future years, I'm sure there will be many, many more. So that's it for our podcast conversation with Jackie Gaughan, a rising American marathon star. Thanks so much for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to hear your stories, and good luck chasing those goals.
thank you for having me.
Amby, I think we learned a lot about an exciting newcomer in the women's marathon from our conversation with Jackie Gaughan. Do you have any particular takeaways from our talk with her?
Yeah, George, I like the science of marathon running a lot. So I was listening to her when she talked about her fueling strategy at Cal International. She's had some good marathons previously and some not so good ones. Let's face it, she went into Chicago this fall ready to burn that one up like the others did, and she more or less bonked. So by the time she got to Cal International, she wasn't really sure what was going on. But what she decided to do was to consume a lot more gels during the race itself, uh, taking in more calories, which is what you get from a couple of extra gels every hour or two. And all of a sudden, instead of bonking, she ran that incredible second half in 1:10 that we've been talking about. This is becoming a very frequent refrain in the marathon now. We're talking about fast times coming from a sort of a doubled down approach to marathon running. The first piece, of course, is wear super shoes because they make a difference. And now the second one's becoming train yourself to consume as many calories as you can en route because that seems to help you stay strong and stay fast and perhaps avoid bonking, which was a problem for so many for so long. So I thought that was really interesting to have Jackie tell us that specifically about her Cal International race. George, what struck you about Jackie's comments?
Yeah, I think it was more I guess you'd call it the psychological approach. She was telling us that at Notre Dame, she was intense and she really wanted to be the best college runner out there. And she felt she didn't live up to her own potential. But then it seemed, as we listened to her, she's gained a lot of wisdom. And she talked about how you don't have to give up everything to be a top pro runner. And it reminded me, Amby, of the great conversation we had with Kira D'Amato, who just some of these runners, particularly some of these top female marathon runners, the way they're able to balance life, I mean, with their jobs and their relationships and their running and all of that, it's just been extraordinary. And she talked about how she was able to get this balance back. She said, I got my life back under me. I kind of like that. And I'm looking forward to seeing her in Boston in April, along with so many of these other top runners and top Americans now in the women's side.
Well, that's right, George. She is running Boston. That'll be her next big race. And she just happens to live, I think she said, a mile off the course downtown. So she's going to do more training on those Newton Hills than practically anyone else in the field. And that's going to be a big help for her, because the Boston course is such a factor when you're running the Boston Marathon. And that's it for this week's episode of Running State of the Sport. We hope you enjoyed joining us as much as we enjoyed sharing the time with you. We'll be back again soon with another episode. Until then, please tell your friends about Running State of the Sport. We'd also appreciate a review at your favorite podcast host, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. In signing off, here's our hope for the state of your own personal running. Chin up, clear eyes, full heart, keep moving, onward.